Hello, it's Philip here from collectingmagicbooks.com, and in this video we're going to look at books about spiritualism and the supernatural. Seances, table tipping, speaking to the dead, all of these were things that were claimed and still are claimed by some people to be possible, and there was a great craze for this in Britain, America and Europe around the turn of the last century, and we're going to look at books about it and books from that period that we have in stock. We've always got quite a lot of second-hand stock on this topic because of its many crossovers with magicians and magic history. So there's always things in the specific magic history section of the site, as it were. And but today we're just going to look at new books. These are the ones that we're going to look at today, because these are the ones we can always keep in stock. Well, you know, unless they go out of print. So here's we're going to start looking at these two. These are quite recent books about the history of spiritualism and seances. This one by Lisa Morton only came out a few years ago, I believe, and we got this in hardback. This looks at the history in a very broad way, and it has some really great images inside. It's a really fantastic book. This probably the best overview that we stock on spiritualism and seances. And another one, Malechi's book, Servants of the Supernatural. This has been out for a few years now. We've got this in paperback. And it also is a good overview of the period. So what was made during the period? Well, famously, Houdini was an anti-spiritualist, and one of his closest friends, although it was a complicated relationship due to their difference of opinion, was Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes books. And Conan Doyle wrote his own history of spiritualism, and it was just that. It was a thorough history of spiritualism, written from the viewpoint, obviously, of a believer, but it's a very interesting historical text nonetheless, and it shows the background to what Houdini and Conan Doyle were feuding about. We also stock, I think, a book called Houdini and Conan Doyle, simply called that. There's two books with that title, but the more recent one talks about their relationship. And we have this book, to return to this one, The History of Spiritualism by Conan Doyle. This was originally published as 2 volumes. These are 2 volumes in one. We've got this lovely hardback edition here, and we've got it in paperback. They're both from the American publisher Curious Publications, and we keep those both in stock. So that's a good bit of background for period writings on spiritualism from the viewpoint of believers. So what about the magicians during this time? Well, Houdini, as mentioned, obviously exposed mediums and spent a lot of his late career busy with that, as did Anderson. John Henry Anderson was an early person doing this, and one of the American people who weren't necessarily exposing mediums but were actually telling people how to do these things was William E. Robinson, who's better known under his later stage name Chung Ling Soo, of course, the magician who sadly his life ended at the Wood Green Empire when he failed to catch a bullet, or rather he caught the bullet a bit too well. And this book is about spirit slates specifically, so slates that are shown to be blank and then sandwiched together or wrapped up in newspaper, and when the spirits supposedly then write upon the slates, giving messages to the living realm. So he wrote this wonderful book, Spirit Slate Writing, very, very rare in its original edition, and Curious Publications again have done a really good job bringing this back into print, so we always keep that in stock. One of our own, which is kind of in a similar vein, is Modern Spiritualism by Maslin, exceedingly rare in its original form. This was sort of privately published by him. It was printed by a mainstream publisher, but I believe that he got them to print it essentially. And this is one of our exclusive series of books on J.N. Maslin's works. It's a really nice hardback. And in this he goes through all sorts of things, the Fox Sisters' home, and table tipping, spirit writing. There's a whole video on YouTube just about this book where I actually look at the original copy as well, so have a look at that video. It's available in our channel. And even more recently than these, the magician Richard Wiseman. he's a psychologist and a magician, and he writes lots of popular psychology books. And this book, Paranormality, we keep in stock. This is his book, more broadly on supernatural, but it does cover things like spiritualism, but also covers spoon bending and all more modern forms of I would call fraudulent mediumship. Some people believe it. They're welcome to. And so that's a little overview of books that we stock, new books that we stock on spiritualism and the supernatural. And we keep these all in stock, these new books. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have lots of books in the second-hand section also about the history of spiritualism and the history of seances and things like that. So head to collectingmagicbooks.com to see more of those.